Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 102 of the Big Time String podcast. Really excited today. We're going to have a kind of a fun show for you, announce some new stuff that we've been thinking together as a podcast gang or crew or whatever we're going to call ourselves. Really excited about a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. Before we get to that, I want to talk about our sponsors as usual, TeamBuildr. I've got the little blurb here, but I'm just going to kind of go off the limb on this. So TeamBuildr, if you listen to the show, they've been with us for a long time, and I just want to share kind of how I've been using the last week or so. Is one of their features is the messaging portion where you can message your athletes, and man, that's coming really handy this week because we kind of announced our COVID protocols to our athletes as a department, and as you might imagine, there's a lot of questions with that. So through TeamBuildr has been a really awesome way that I can access all those athletes and just basically start a forum through that messaging app where they can ask questions on how's this going to look and why are we wearing masks and this, and this. It's been a really awesome feature that TeamBuildr provides that's outside of everything else too. So if you are interested in online training software to help you out, please visit TeamBuildr. Hewitt and his gang are awesome. You can find their information in the show notes. PowerLift is our other second awesome sponsor. They are the leading manufacturer and distributor of heavy-duty strength training equipment for collegiate and high school athletic performance centers around the world. They bring over 20 years of experience, and all their products are manufactured in their state-of-the-art facility in Jefferson, Iowa. They are proud to support all the coaches who make the big time where they're at, and their social media has been pretty good the last couple of weeks. They put out some pictures of some cool rooms they've been doing. So check out PowerLift. We are really appreciative of them being a sponsor of the Big Time Strength podcast. Our last sponsor that we'll talk about today is Evan Sports Performance and his progressive speed system. If you're a strength coach who struggles in the area of speed development, or if you wish you had a system to teach acceleration, multi-directional speed, or maybe you know a lot of speed and agility drills but don't really know how to use them in a systemized way, if you would like a system that allows you to plug in your favorite drills in a progressive way to allow you to slowly prepare your athletes to move better on the field, head over to evansportsperformance.com and type in BTS 50, and he'll hook you up with a $50 off discount on his progressive speed system. Really cool stuff there from Evan Sports Performance. So as usual, thank you to our sponsors. Just really appreciate their support. That allows us to bring this podcast to you for free, which is very important for us as coaches. So all right, getting into today, we have Coach Preston and Coach Amanda on the call with us today, and we're going to have some fun stuff that we've been kind of brainstorming. You know, we're 100 episodes in. We've kind of had a certain format for a really long time, and we like what we're doing. We think we're providing a really good platform for our coaches to speak from and resource for coaches to listen in on, but doesn't mean we can't get better. And we thought of some ways that we're going to continue to hopefully add value to our listeners, but also maintain our main role as coaches and not professional podcasters. So, which is important for us with families. So this episode itself is going to be called what we're going to call crew episodes or gang episodes. We don't even know how we're going to do that, but what we're specifically going to call them. But we're going to have all three of us on the call and just talk training, take questions from listeners. We want to get more engagement with you guys because we have certain questions we always address, but I know there's other ones out there that maybe we're not thinking of. So finding ways we can engage more with our audiences is going to be really important for us to move forward, which we have ways to do that, which we will discuss as we move forward. But we're really excited to have these crew episodes because we are a team here. Us three of us. It's not just three different people all sharing the same platform to host a podcast. We are a team, and bringing us together on these episodes is going to be fun for us and hopefully provide just a kind of a different format, different type of show for our listeners to engage on. So they're going to be in the rotation. So you'll hear one from me, small school, college coach. You'll hear one from Preston, a high school coach. You'll hear one from Coach Berg, a female coach, and then you'll have these crew episodes as well. So really excited to kind of put these in the rotation here moving forward. So with this, we kind of met recently and really want to take back and make sure we have a just like you would on hopefully in your athletic departments and in your strength conditioning departments, is like a purpose statement, and really define who we are as a podcast, and everything else from there can stem out. So if you've been a long time listener of the show, we talk about, what we're about. And so we wanted to revisit that and make sure we needed to tweak it or add. And we tweaked a little bit, but I do want to kind of read through just so everybody's on the same page of who we are as a podcast. And I'm going to let Coach Peterson and Coach Berg kind of chip in here too on their individual thoughts. But our show description, or kind of our mission, has always been the reason for this show is the Big Time Strength Podcast. We aim to provide a valuable resource to all strength conditioning professionals through conversations with small school coaches and make the big time where they're at. That's the mission. That's the description. That's what we've done for the last 100 episodes. And we're really excited about that. We kind of always go with the tagline of small school coaches, big time results. That's a tagline that we're using in our branding and kind of who we are as a show. And then just from like a purpose statement standpoint of, we are everyday coaches dedicated to giving a powerful voice to small school coaches who get big time results. And we are everyday coaches. This is, and I mentioned on shows before, we are not professional podcasters. So there's going to be other podcasts with better audio, better editing, cool in and outs, cool graphics on the social media and stuff. And we can do a better job in those areas. And we want to provide a good resource. That's not what we're saying. We're not trying to put a crappy product out there. But at the same time, we all have families. We're all running strength conditioning departments. So our number one goal is to be coaches and husbands and wives and fathers and all that stuff. But we want to give also a great resource out there for our coaches. So Preston, Amanda, why don't you guys chip in here and give your thoughts?
Yeah, just so that we're clear coming across from that, the drive to get better and the drive to make sure that we're getting good content out there, I think stems from, prior to these crew meetings, we get the opportunity to meet as a staff, as a group or a crew or a gang or whatever Gage wants to call this thing, and just talk through what we really see as a vision moving forward, and talk about things that are happening within strength and conditioning. So it's always fun to do that, and I'm excited just with the new addition of Coach Berg, just getting her thoughts on everything. I've known Gage for a good amount of time now, and now just having a new perspective, a new way to look at things, and already a bunch of great ideas coming from Coach Berg. I think the opportunity, yes, we are coaches. Yes, podcast is not our main thing, but man, it is a lot of fun to be able to sit down with these people and think through how we're going to get it better and how we're going to give that product the best that we can with the time that we have. So thankful for Gage and Amanda for doing that stuff. And then the other thing that I think about, and it's pretty cool, is just being able to meet coaches across the nation and just learn. And I think Gage said it from the very beginning, and it's the same here. And I'm sure Coach Berg would echo this too. It's truly, like selfishly, we get to learn every time that we get to interview people. And I think that's so cool to be able to record that and have other people learn right along with us, and have the resources across the United States of coaches that are willing to share information to make their student athletes better. And I think that's making it big time, is when all these coaches are so willing to do that stuff. So from my perspective, that's part of the reason why I love doing this stuff, is because there are so many cool coaches out there that just want to do the best that they can where they're at. And that's so fun that they get to share that with us.
Yeah, along the same lines, what really drew me to this podcast, that I was like, I want to be on this podcast, was when hearing both of you and the fact that you were everyday coaches, and hearing Gage, say what he had just said before, that maybe this isn't necessarily perfect what we're putting out, but that really actually drew me to you. And I hope that it continues to with all our other coaches that we have on and our coaches that we have out there listening to us, because just the fact that we are in it every day, you know, we leave this and then we go and we coach. And now coming into these crew episodes, I think is just going to be a very, very valuable resource for our coaches. So, and I'm excited to highlight a few things and reflect on what our coaches have to say. So sometimes we kind of move on to the next, and it's fun. It'll be fun to come back. So that's why I'm very excited about these crew episodes, just coming back and reflecting on the great input and the impact that the coaches we interview had on us. So I'm very excited for this, and we are everyday coaches. That's the biggest thing that I can say about this. It's just, it'll be good. So excited for our listeners, and gonna put out some good stuff.
Yeah, well said by both, and I 100% agree. And part of that is, again, it's a fine line between wanting to make this the best we possibly can. And just to give you kind of a peek behind the curtain for our listeners, it does take a lot of time on our end to make this stuff and market it and do these things. So it's a fine line between making this the best we can while also balancing all of our other obligations that are just as high of a priority and many more higher priorities. But with that, we think we have some ways to really, outside of the podcast, kind of engage our listeners and kind of create a community outside of just downloading a podcast and listening. So we got some ideas kind of coming down the chain here that we're excited to kind of announce. So I'm going to let Amanda kind of talk about maybe this online community that we're going to try to create with our Facebook page.
Sure. So the first thing I'm excited to announce that we are going to roll out will be a Facebook group, and or I should say a Facebook community. And this will be a place where you'll be able to obviously listen to our podcast, but also a place to revisit some of our guests and follow-ups with our guests, so you can converse with them. Maybe if you have a question that you thought about after the podcast airs and you'd like to ask the guest, this would be the place for it. So in a community where we can just really highlight small school coaches, and it'll be great. I'm very, very, very excited about it, and we're rolling it out right away. So stay tuned for that. That'll be our Facebook group, Big Time Strength.
Yeah, it's going to be a place as well that we can just, I think probably most people listening are part of one of the NSCA SIGs or something like that. So, it'd be a place that we can bounce ideas off each other. But also, like a community, we can create more value than just a place to talk about squats, So we're excited about that. There'll be a lot of cool stuff going on there. And that will be coming out this week sometime. So please look forward to that on Facebook. If you have questions on that, please let us know. And the next part of that is also apparel. So something we've been thinking about for a long time is putting out apparel in some way, shirts, hats, whatever it might be, for people to buy. And that would be an easy way for us to make some additional money, which we could easily do. But another it's not in our mission statement or anything like that, but we had a discussion, and it's something that's been on my mind, on my heart for a long time, is just giving back. And we have a pretty good following through this podcast, and I think we need to use that for a greater good than just sharing strength conditioning information. And we don't make much money off of this at all. But if we can bring in some money and use that for a greater purpose than just sharing strength conditioning content, I think that would be a very powerful thing for our show to do. And I'm going to let Preston take away here in a second on a company we're going to partner with to leverage apparel and improving our brand and all that in a way, but it's also giving back to really important causes. Preston, you want to kind of talk about what we're going to do with that?
Yeah, so we're actually going to partner with a company called One Mission. They're based out of Mount Vernon. That's where I'm at, and they've got a really cool. I've actually got to coach 4 of their kids so far, so I've gotten to know their family pretty well. And just excited to partner with them because in the same way that you could do like GoFundMe or something similar like that, maybe it was a social media campaign for a family that is in need or some sort of cause. They have the same idea with this one mission, but it's through apparel. So you buy apparel, and then the proceeds from that can go to whatever organization or group or cause that you want to go to. So for us, the way that we've talked about doing this is like for a certain section of the year or a few weeks when this apparel store will be for Gage's. He'll choose an organization, a charity or whatever, and we'll announce that in the show where the current apparel proceeds will be going to. So I'm super excited about that. So Gage would have like the first shot of whatever charity he wants to donate to, and he could probably talk about this more, but his cousin passed away this past year, and one of the things that's near and dear to his heart is cancer research, something that he wants to give to, and he's got a specific organization that he likes to support for cancer research. And then Coach Berg would be able to choose a charity, and then eventually I would get to choose a charity, and then all the proceeds would go to that. Yes, it'll be an awesome opportunity for you to support the show, but more so our show is just going to turn around and support whatever organization or charity that is. So kind of cool deal where you can get some big time strength swag, but know that the money is not going just to support some podcasters. It's going to go to a charity. And we're really excited about that. We'll give you more information how to get that going here in the next week or two. Here in Iowa, we had a derecho, which is actually like a 100-mile-an-hour plus winds that kind of tore apart eastern Iowa where I live. And so things are a little bit backed up right now, but we are going to get that stuff rolled out to you as soon as we can. So appreciate any support that you guys would do that way, and we'll give you the links to the charities, exactly where the money's going and what it will be used for. So if it's something that is sitting with your heart, then you'll have that opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Preston. And again, all that we'll definitely be pushing out through our Facebook page and stuff like that. So another reason, once we get this Facebook group and community going, please join it. Because obviously all that stuff and information will be pushed through there. But again, just another way, I think, as a crew here, just to signify that we're not coaches trying to make a bunch of money off of podcasts and stuff. Not that that's wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But we're trying to leverage what we have here to do some good. So that kind of wraps up kind of the first portion of what we want to do on this specific episode. But moving forward on these crew episodes is we want to talk training, and we'll talk life. We'll talk about really whatever we want. And we want to answer questions from our audience and whatever's on your guys' minds too. But if you guys don't have any questions for us, we'll make up our own. So today we're going to talk COVID a little bit. Coach Berg's got a really good question too that about coaching just with kids and stuff that I kind of told these guys before we started recording, I'm going to try not to go on rants today. I'm kind of in a ranting mood. But I do want to start just with COVID in general. And I think everybody's probably, for the most part, following similar protocols. You know, it's distanced, masks, and all that. So, I mean, we could talk a little bit about that, what specifically our protocols are. But kind of my thoughts on this today, and what brought this up is everybody's got different situations, and to fit kind of, and I'm talking to other coaches, those general themes that everybody's doing with COVID, you know, it's like I said, it's we're distanced, we're masked, we're limiting our numbers, we're cleaning, we're doing all this stuff. But it's been just interesting on different people, how they, I guess, execute those guidelines within their setting. And at Jewel, we're restricting our groups to 10 because that's the room we have. And what's been interesting for me to find out during this process is I've been a part of a committee within our athletic department. That's a subcommittee within the entire college of just kind of operations as we get ready to roll here with COVID in the COVID era this fall semester. And it's just been interesting how kind of the trickle down effect of the direction the college has set on how we're going to handle this COVID, how that trickles down to us and how we, I guess, have our role within that and what we can and can't do. So basically, you know, if the college takes this very conservative, very cautious approach, obviously that we have to mirror that, which is what we're done. And I just look at other coaches on social media and stuff and talking to other coaches, and a lot of people are doing a lot more than we are. Some are doing less than we are. But I think the underlying theme of all this is to see big picture. So this week, we kind of announced our COVID protocols to our entire athletic department, including my protocols for our weight room, and both to coaches first, and then we actually just released it to our athletes yesterday. And it's just been really interesting how maybe short-sighted some people's views about this whole thing are. And this whole thing has been like, our number one goal is to achieve, maintain, and preserve on-campus learning for the college. So like all my protocols have to fit that. It's no more like trying to win the World Series this fall or the Super Bowl this fall. It's like our goal is to do this, and our guidelines are this way to achieve that. And I was expecting pushback from coaches and athletes, but it was just interesting how some coaches just are still just worried about their team, and they're just trying to balance that. Well, this is what we've normally done, and this won't fit into this protocol. And I've had to have some coaches like, listen, anytime you start a statement with me right now, they're like, well, what we usually do is this. I start to tune you out because you're not reading the room. Like, it's a pandemic. Nothing that we're doing is what we've normally done. And without getting too far down that rabbit hole there, I think just as coaches, we need to be like we already are and probably should be the most adaptable people in the athletic department. But just that's never been more clear to me than just this past week of like how unadaptable and immediate reaction, emotional people get about like their team and their stuff without seeing big picture. And I think it's really important as us coaches that we have to be the most adaptable people in the room. And my last thought on this is what helped me, and to give some practical advice for coaches that I think really helped me in this process, is if you're in the situation where you're going to have to limit the people in your weight room, not everybody's going to have to get access. Make sure you have reasoning for selecting who does and who does not get access, whether access at all or who gets 2 days, who gets 3 days. And my thought behind that was we gave teams we saw it through who needs the equipment in the room to achieve our number one objective, and that's reduce the likelihood of injury. So we looked at the needs of the sport and not just like which teams love the weight room, which teams don't, because that's just like an objective thing that's not really fair for me to make that call. So we looked at it as who needs the weight room for the needs of the sport, which eventually eliminated teams like golf and tennis and cross country, who definitely need the weight room, but they don't need it as much as these other sports. And that kind of saved my butt with a lot of coaches who maybe thought they got the short end of the stick and stuff, that it just makes sense. When they take the emotions out, it's hard to disagree with on how we came to those decisions. So, all right, I'm going to shut up about my COVID stuff and those, but just being adaptable is I think you gotta be adaptable in these times, which is an obvious statement, but not so obvious in practicality and in execution, I think. What are you guys' thoughts?
Gage, I think that's great that you're communicating with the coaches about that and just talking to them, because we've also trained this summer, and we started out with 9 to a group, 10 with the coach, and then now we're moving up to 24 in the room. And one thing I'm noticing as new athletes come in, as new sports teams come in, is they really need that buffer time to just readjust. And as strength coaches, we're lucky that we need to be leaders for them and kind of give ease them a little bit. So just saying everything isn't how it was before and knowing that the goals are different, I think that really helps with the coaches as well. Then they are able to make that adjustment with their sports team. So that's been a big thing that I've noticed. Another one is with the athletes. They also need that buffer time. They need to come in, and just getting them in the door for us as high school, they got to choose whether or not. That was hard. It took a lot. Who's going to be in my group? I only have 9 people in the room. What's it going to look like? Can I have spotters? Just getting them in the door is a huge bonus and kind of reassuring them. So that's what I really noticed was very different. You can't just walk in the room and train anymore. You have to ease their mind a little bit with stuff. So Ryan Johnson wrote a great blog saying that strength and conditioning is the front porch of sports, that we need to show as strength coaches that we can do this right. And we're going to, if we can do this right in the weight room, we're going to be able to do this right with our sports. So that was really beneficial for me, but it's definitely a different time. One advice that I would give to coaches is this is the time where you really need to say your needs, and you need to talk to your administrators and your leaders and say, hey, realistically, we have half of the space that we normally would. So for instance, I went to my AD and I said, we really need another coach. Would this be the time that we could hire another coach so we could start a group outside and then rotate them in? So that's been a big part that I asked for. And then share with your coaches what you're doing. This is the time, especially as high school strength coaches, highlight what you're doing right now, because sometimes we're humble and we go to work and we do what it takes, but we can't burn ourselves out along the way. So stand up for yourself, ease the kids into it, ease the coaches into it would be the biggest advice that I would have for a summer of training, after a summer of training.
I think playing off that a little bit, Amanda, the thing that I see is when you ease kids into it and you ease coaches into it the way that you're saying, I think you have to cast vision. I've got a friend, he was actually, Aaron Riesland was on the show. He's one of the guys that I talk to a lot, and he just talks about when you can cast a vision, when you can have a long-term plan, it's best to do that so you make the best short-term decisions, right? So those that have a long-term plan make the best short-term decisions. And when you can see, like I think Gage talked about it a couple times there, is when you can see the big picture and then show people where you want to go along that path and just have new constraints, it's such a big deal, right? So if we tell people where we want to go and the road to get there is a little bit different, right? It's a little bit more bumpy right now. There's a lot more tape that's going across the road and all these cones and stuff. Now we can navigate it a little bit better, knowing that we have a destination that we're still getting to. And I just know that when you ease into it, like what you're saying, and when you have the big picture in mind, like what Gage said, I think that's just such a huge deal for our athletes. And like you guys said, for coaches, I want to take it a step further, maybe for parents too, right? When parents, so at the college level, you don't have to mess with parents as much, but at the high school level, I think engaging parents is one of the biggest things that you can do for your program, because when dinner time at home says, man, they're doing everything they can at school, they're doing everything that they can in Mustang strength and speed to give you the best thing that they can in this situation. Now the kid doesn't hear, man, like this is COVID sucks, this is all crazy, like all that. Now they're switching the mindset to being problem solvers. And one of the things that I'm drawn to both Gage and Amanda is just problem solvers, being people that are looking for the best response to any event. And I know I've talked about it, I know Gage talks about it, but if you guys listen to the Focus 3 podcast, if our listeners, if you're on here and you're just like, man, I want to know more about how to navigate behaviors, right? Like human behavior is like the biggest unknown. It's the reason why things don't always go the way that we need it to go, is because human behavior is so nuts. Some strategies and best ways to do that. Check out the Focus 3 podcast. That's not a plug for I just listen to them, and it's so helpful for me just to think through, if we want to have the best outcomes possible, our response has to be the best that it can be with the constraints to our situation. So not to say that every situation is going to be perfect, but it can be the best that we can try to make it anyway. Any thoughts on that, Amanda?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's just, as strength coaches, we're different. We have to be versatile that way. And
Right.
That's very definitely forward thinking about it. One thing this week that really stood out to me that I didn't think about, because we're in the Midwest here, we have a lot of athletes going, but I was on the play coaching nexus for high school coaches, and our talk this week was COVID. And I can't believe how many coaches are not training and have not been with their athletes since March. And just more than anything, a little bit of the sadness of that and just how long it's been. So hopefully you can take some of this if you're not training right now and it's been since March, that you'll be able to start that process now. So that was definitely beneficial for me to go on that this week. But well, good. Well, I kind of want to move on and talk about one more question of the day. With COVID and quarantine, I know something that definitely I really focused on was my work and my life and work-life balance. And I was thinking of you two, and having new babies and one on the way, and myself, I have three older kids, 12, 11, and 9. And how have things changed within the last couple of years from you? And as young coaches, how are you adjusting from it related to your work-life balance?
I'll let Gage go first.
That's an interesting question. It's been tough. So context, I have a 3-year-old boy, Macklin, and he's awesome. He's really fun age right now. Wanting to play all the sports, just a ball of energy. And then my wife and I welcomed our second child, Rowan, baby girl, on April 28th or 9th, 29th, pretty sure, right in the middle of COVID. So, this summer has been interesting. So this is one thing that's been bothering me on social media is these like if and then statements. So one thing I saw a lot, and I'll tie this in, trust me, saw on social media this amongst coaches during this quarantine period is like, if you don't come out with a new skill, or if you don't come out a 10 times better coach during quarantine, then you're going to get passed up or whatever. Or if you don't read 17 books during this period, then what are you doing? And I'm just like, you look at most people are saying that, they don't have kids. So it's like, for me, honestly, to be transparent, like I didn't get as much out of this quarantine period from a coaching standpoint than probably a lot of people did, just because with my situation, like just adapting to this new world where we have 2 kids now, has been really hard. It's obviously my wife and I be playing man-to-man defense. She's got her a lot, and I've got Macklin, and we switch, and it's been tough. And we really haven't. We're getting ready to test that out next week when I go back to work really full time. It's going to be interesting, but just trying to find times here and there where maybe I can put a podcast episode on while I'm, feeding the baby and stuff like that is kind of my approach right now. And it's not, it's been difficult, and I don't know if I'm answering this question very well, but I guess my point is like, just do the best you can in your situation. Your professional development, your work-life balance is going to look much different than everybody else's. You might not be able to read 12 books in 2 months, like some coaches seem to be able to do on social media, and I certainly can't. But I'm getting ready to find that out, because I really been fortunate to where I've been able to be home a lot, because we haven't really coached that much this summer. You guys have done much more of that. So that's kind of my answer to that. Not a whole lot of practicality with it, but Preston, go ahead.
Yeah, just in general, I would say that I'm not great at it. Like I'd love to have my wife on here for this question to see what her perspective is on it. Because, one of the things that I try to do is I tried to learn as much as I can, and I try to read 17 books, but it really doesn't work out. You know, we have one at home. Jason, he just turned 2, and we're going to have another one mid-October. So super excited for that. But I just think about like what I'm called to do, and I think I'm called to serve my house before anything else. And sometimes I get that flipped on its head, and sometimes, especially, and Emily and I we've felt this ebb and flow when school starts and when football starts, because I also coach football. It is just a tough time for our family. And so a couple of years ago, when we had Jace, this is literally what happened. When school started, football started, and we had a baby, right? And so it's like, okay, figure things out on the fly, or be in the doghouse for the rest of my life type situation for me, because I want to be a great husband, and I want to be a great dad. And I think from that overflow, I will be a great teacher and a great coach. But if I get those out of order, I really think that's something that will fall for me. And I know that's a prototypical answer. So here's some practical things that I've heard from coaches and I've started to implement is I think valuing time at home and getting ready to be at home is a big deal. And one of the things that I do right before I get out of my car is I take a deep breath before I pick everything up. You know, like my backpack and anything I'm carrying inside, I take a deep breath. For me, you know, this is different for everybody, but I have just a quick time of prayer, refocus, and then go inside so I can be the best husband I can be and the best father I can be. And for me, it sounds small, but to refocus and to be like, okay, what is my job now? What, you know, because we spend so much of our time at work. What is my job now? It gives me that purpose again. When you can refocus on what really matters again, I think that it just puts you in the right mindset. So that's one of the things that I do. But over quarantine time, it was really tough, right? So now we're going back to school. We're going back to everything's kind of starting to start up again. And during quarantine time, what I mean by really tough was just trying to figure out when should I be working and when should I be being dad, you know, and it was really tough at the beginning before we kind of made a schedule, and just like having some structure with that. I'm super structured. So like having structure with that was helpful. So if you're a listener and you're like, man, these guys are just rambling about COVID time, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. I want you to know that everybody struggles with work-life balance because it's ebbs and flows, right? At certain points, you have to get work done. And at certain points, you have to be at home and you have to be present. And just being able to feel that out and know the situation, I think is probably the skill, rather than seeing if you can balance something evenly or have one more than the other.
Yeah. Well said, P.
Yes, great stuff. I think you guys are, I mean, you can tell that you're putting family first. You're making it a priority. And I appreciate that. I think as coaches, sometimes we can get where, wow, this is so important, I need to do this. And one of the best questions that I get asked, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but what is from coaches is, yeah, what would be your advice with having, you know, I'm having a new baby or having things. And I think the biggest piece I can give as far as from a woman's perspective is you get so excited about having that baby there and what I'm going to do with this baby or this, your child. What I can say is at least the first 7 months, your priority needs to be that child's parent. That your priority needs to be, what does, you know, for your cases, what does my wife need at this time? You know, does she need me to be home at a certain time so that she can go somewhere and do something? Does she need me to get up at a certain time? And starting to get your coaching life around that, what your spouse needs, because it's so easy to be like, I just want to be there for my kid. But in those early months, you got to be there for the spouse. So we kind of have my husband and I, we definitely worked through this through our kids. We have a kind of a running joke on my third child. We drove home from the hospital and I dropped my husband off at work and then I drove home. And we reflect on that now, that how big of a mistake that was. So just the priority we put on his work compared to what I needed at that time. So that's been a big one. Be there for your significant other and plan your coaching of what would it look like when you walk away. You know, so for us as females, I had to leave for 6 weeks, you know, and that's 6 weeks you had to plan that people really weren't contacting you for 6 weeks. So as far as like male coaches, at least 1 week, what would your training look like if they could not contact you for that first week of your child's life? So that would be kind of the big suggestion pieces. And I'm really seeing a difference. We have a coach, I'm so proud of him. He's a young coach, and you know, I ask him, could you do the morning? And he says, nope, my wife has mornings where she can do whatever she needs to do, and I have afternoons. And so he said no. And that would be something that I would have thought hard to do. So I'm appreciating that it's really becoming conversation, and coaches are really making their home life a priority. So that's a little advice I'd have about it.
I think that's a great point, because I think it's so easy to forget that. I mean, like I just think of that example you just said, like, yeah, I can do that. And then you have to go to your wife and make her change stuff, and it's just priorities. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a great point. That's a really good question too. I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's something we haven't ever really discussed on the show, which is why we have kind of these crew episodes that we're going to keep doing, is to just talk about this stuff a little bit more and incorporate, hopefully, listeners' questions. So send them to us. So let's wrap this up. It's a Saturday for us. So if we're talking about family, let's get back to our family time. But let's go just quick roundtable, or a quick round, just a look back episode. So if you had one episode that you've interviewed or coach you've interviewed that you want to tell our listeners to go back and listen to, you don't even have to explain why. Who is it? Preston, you go first, and Amanda, then I'll do mine.
So not to say that all the other ones weren't great, but right now the one that I've been focusing on a ton is Jeff Jones, and defining what it looks like to have a leader, have a culture, have a whatever, and defining it more. To have a plan for how culture is going to be driven throughout your whole school or your whole class. That's mine.
Okay. I like it. Well, mine's a little bit easier because I've only had 2 so far, but I kind of want to talk about both of them. One, when Jessica Gus said, asked her about the BigTime, and she said, this is where I am meant to be. This is what I'm meant to do. And I think I was put here to be a strength coach. That was just like reiterate every single thing about our show, having her say that. So that was wonderful. And then Kylie, our last interview, when she said, I am so hard on the kids. I get so hard on them, but I need to remember that when they do something great, I need to celebrate just as hard as how hard I was on them. And I think that's a mistake I make a lot of times in coaching, is I can get hard on them, and then when they do it right, I don't celebrate it enough. So that's been really sticking out, even with my own children. That's been sticking out at me this week. So
yeah,
great stuff.
That's great. Mine is, I've been thinking about a lot, is Matt 9, and he's like one of the first 10 or 15 episodes, and just his conversation around culture and commitment, a lot about commitment and what being committed means. And I think that's going to be a huge thing when it comes to this quarantine and COVID and all that. I want to dive back into his stuff a little bit and just see how we can implement some of those commitment continuums, stuff like that. Because it's going to test, if you just want to talk from an athletic standpoint, of course you want them to be healthy. There's a lot of other priorities from COVID related standpoint, but if you want to test commitment, I think that's going to be really exposed on who's committed and who's not here in the next few months during all this training. So Matt 9, I want to say it's episode 9. I don't know. Search it. It's on there. I want to say it's 9 on episode 9, but that's probably not right. I don't know. You can find it. So, all right. Thanks, guys. This has been awesome. I'm really excited about the future we're taking this podcast to, and listeners, look out for the Facebook page, and that apparel stuff will be coming out soon as well. We'll keep updating you on that. And the last thing I want to end this with is ask you guys for a review. And I didn't do a very good job of prepping for this show and have a review pulled up, but we'll start sharing reviews that we've gotten on Apple or wherever you guys listen to the show at. But we don't ask for anything from our listeners. We don't obviously make you pay for it or anything like that. But if you like us, please give us a rating, again, on whatever platform you're using. Leave us a comment. Tell us what we're doing well. 5-star ratings only is what we ask.
Yeah.
Just kidding. If you got a 1-star, give it to us. It's fine. I get those from my athletes sometimes, so go for it. We can take it. And then share it. So if you like this episode, or if you like any other episode you've liked, please share it with a coach. Let's grow this audience. Let's impact as many people as we can. So that's it. I appreciate you guys. Look forward to next week where we have another awesome interview from an amazing small school coach. Thanks, guys.